Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Is It Bloody Working? I'm JJ and this is my co-founder in Ladder of Growth, Alexia. Hello, Alexia.
Hi, JJ.
So today what we want to talk about is what do we mean by working? What is working? So, does it mean that it's hard work or does it mean that it's actually useful or, are things changing? What do we mean by that? Coping, is that working? Or because that's not the same as growing. Functioning isn't the same as thriving. So we want to just flesh out what we mean by working, don't we?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people put a lot of time, money, and effort into doing things like whether it's meditation, going to therapy, and without necessarily asking themselves, like maybe brutally asking themselves, like, is this working? Like, am I getting what I want out of this? Why am I paying for this, putting time into it? What am I expecting as an outcome? And am I getting that outcome? But also, in even saying that out loud, I kind of feel like, where are people's expectations in terms of outcome? Maybe people don't have the kind of expectations that maybe you or I have going into something like that. So we all have very different expectations going into something. When I think about therapy, for example, a lot of people really appreciate better understanding themselves, like having a mirror reflect back them so they can better understand who they are. And that is incredibly valuable to somebody at that stage in their growth journey. Whereas if somebody's going to therapy because they want to get rid of their anxiety and they come out with knowing themselves better, but that's it. Well, maybe they haven't got what they want out of it, but were they clear with themselves at the beginning what they wanted to get out of that process? So I think even just asking the question forces us to consider, well, what is it that what do we want working to mean? And to be upfront about our expectation about something when we sign up to, whether it's an hour, not an hour, a year's worth of subscription to a meditation app, for example. Like, what are you expecting from that when you do go into those kind of things? So I think it raises a lot of questions when you start asking this question: what does working actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you. I think, years ago, before I did a lot of work on myself, personal development work, I don't think I even had a clear idea of what I was expecting from any of it, right? It was
Yeah.
just somebody said, oh, this will make you feel better.
And you just said the words, feel better. I
Yeah,
just want to
exactly.
feel better. What does that
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly. Because there's a big difference between feeling better and there being some real change that's going on under the surface that means that you're going to be able to cope with things better. And that's just a fact, isn't it?
No, I know, because the problem is, especially those that live in the UK, the minute the sun comes out, everyone feels better. But that doesn't mean anything really. We just suddenly like being in the sunshine, and because we don't see it enough, when it comes out, we suddenly feel great. So we need to separate those things in life where, like sunshine, but also for women, like hormones, when you get beaten up once a month. So suddenly you're not feeling better, you're feeling anything but better. How can we separate those elements in our lives from actually how we're feeling, or where we can like where our baseline is, like when things are, when we're up against it, when we're up with our back against the wall, or we're under pressure, or we've just had a tricky moment, where do we go to in those times? Because that's who we really are. That's the person that we can count on to help us through tricky moments. And if we know that every time things come crashing in that we fall quite low, then we haven't got a very high baseline. Whereas if you know that even if it's not sunny, even if your hormones are all playing like the same direction, like even in all those things, you still are somebody that can, you can rely on yourself to be at a certain mental or emotional state. That, this is what we want to bring into the conversation, so we can shine a light on it, so we can have more of an understanding and awareness about who we are in those times.
Yeah, and it's also about recovery, isn't it? It's not. We're not saying that you have to be good all the time, right? Because we all have our down times, like you said, hormonal. Sometimes we're
Right.
hormonal and we get very low, but it's how you recover from that, and it's how you deal with that. But also, here's the thing: I mean, people talk about coping strategies, and I don't hear so much talk about resolution. Do you?
No, I know. I could get on a soapbox right now, and I might just for a bit,
Go
because
on, do 5 minutes. Go on.
the whole coping strategies and managing something I just feel like the whole of the self-help space is just full of that. I'm like, I brought out a book just before Christmas called Clear Anxiety for Good. And that for good is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because that's how I feel about it, is you can get rid of it for good. And ever since I was doing some lives about it, I was talking about anxiety. Suddenly I started getting a lot of stuff in my algorithm around anxiety, and it which made me laugh, because I started getting loads of courses on Facebook in an ad. Oh, do our course, pay a lot for our course, and we'll teach you how to manage anxiety. And I nearly threw my phone out the window, because I'm like, what is this nonsense out there about teaching people to cope and manage, when actually we want resolution? We want to get rid of anxiety. We want to get rid of those things where we're not feeling great, not manage it better. That doesn't help any of us. And maybe that's why we're sitting on a mental health crisis right now, because everybody's managing stuff unsuccessfully. Whereas if we were getting rid of it, we would actually be moving on with our lives, right?
Yeah, right. But again, that's not to say that we're going to be great all the time, because life isn't just a one single straight line, right?
No.
Horizontal line. We go up and we go down. Otherwise, you don't kind of know what's good and what's not so good, right? So you've got to have that contrast. But it's where you come back to once you settle again, isn't it? It's how quickly you can return to a state of functioning well.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
the aim, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's an example I use quite a lot with people, and it always kind of helps get the message across. I'm just going to share it now. And it's imagine taking some kids to the park on a sunny day. Let's say they're toddlers, they're maybe 5, 7, that kind of thing. And then there's an ice cream van, and they're like, oh, can we get an ice cream? Can we get an ice cream? And they're really excited. So yeah, you get an ice cream, and then you give them the ice cream. Then then somebody knocks into them, and then the ice cream falls on the floor, and now they're crying, and then it's all drama. And then it's like, don't worry, we'll get you another one. And then, oh, got another ice cream, and then they're smiling again, and they're back really happy. And in the spaces of like 4 minutes, they've gone through this huge roller coaster of yay, ice cream, oh, on the floor, yay, another ice cream. And they've processed those emotions really quickly. Like, that's basically how things should be. Emotions, I'm sure many of you who are into self-help have probably heard people say, oh, emotions is energy in motion. And that's what we mean. It's like emotions are just moving through us. But
Yeah.
what we found for a lot of people is they don't move through us. They kind of land and they get stuck. And so that disappointment of the ice cream falling on the floor in an adult world, that disappointment could sit with you for a day, for a week, for 2 weeks. I remember somebody on one of my, I do lots of group clearance programs. And there was one lady on one call. She said, oh, yeah, no, my boss said something to me last Monday, and I still can't shake it. So she'd been holding this for 10 days. So that clearly is an example of an emotion just kind of getting stuck and not being processed, not moving on. And that's where, if you've got a low, if your baseline is low, you tend to kind of gather these emotions that just kind of get stuck, rather than be able to kind of fling them on and process them and move on with your life. So it's having an understanding of that, I think, can really help us navigate what we're going through a lot better.
Yes. And also, another word that you hear a lot in personal development circles is thrive. We're all told that we need to learn to thrive. But that is very different to what a lot of people talk about, and that is functioning. So, can we talk about the difference between functioning and thriving here?
Yeah, yeah. Well, functioning, in my view, is just barely keeping it together.
Yeah.
You've got a job, you can just about make it there on time. You've probably had a bad night's sleep, but you've got through the day. You get home, you're like, right, glass of wine, please, because I've just made it through another day. Thank God. For me, that's functioning. You're getting it done on paper. It looks good, but how do you feel really? Like, are you energized by that experience? Do you come away and you're like, oh yeah, no, home from work right now, I'm going to go and do X, Y, Z with the kids. I've got the energy within me. I can do what, I'm going to do some stuff around the garden, whatever it is. Do you have that capacity to continue to do more and enjoy it? Or you feeling done in by what you've just managed to scrape through, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, thriving isn't just about being happy all the time.
No.
Right? That's not it at all. Yeah.
Tell
It's
us,
very
JJ, what is thriving?
well, what is thriving for me? It's being able to do all the things you want to do, and actually having the energy and the capacity to get on with your life and do what you're meant to be doing in your life, right? Having some kind of momentum that is, I was going to say elevating you, but that's kind of a tainted word in many circles. But keeping you going and full of energy and life, right?
Mm,
That's thriving to me. Functioning is just going through the motions and getting through it.
yeah. And thriving kind of makes me want to think about purpose a little bit. When some of the things you were
Yeah.
saying then made me think about, excuse me, if you've got purpose, you've got a destination in mind, if you like, a reason, a raison d'etre for what you're doing, that can really help you feel more fulfilled and thrive. And this is, a question is like, do we need a purpose in order to thrive? I'm not sure we do. I don't know if there's research around that, but I think you can thrive without purpose. What do you think?
Oh, I think you probably can actually. Yes, I'm just putting myself into that space and imagining how that would be not to have a purpose, but also to be thriving. Yeah, why not? You know,
Yeah,
I mean, actually, one's purpose can just be
yeah,
to, to live in a way that is perfectly fine and enjoyable, and energizing to us, but not with any particular purpose. I mean, brings me back to plants, for instance. Plants, I don't know. Well, I mean, I do speak to my plants, but I don't know that they have a purpose, with inverted commas around it in life. They just grow and they
yeah,
just are. And as long as they have their needs met and they're in, they get sunlight, they're happy.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they flourish, they procreate,
yeah.
so I mean, some people will say, well, we're not plants, are we? But no, we're not. But I can see how some people be very, very happy, contented, and thriving without a major purpose.
Well, the purpose can be to be a great parent. It could be
Yeah,
to be there for my family. I mean, that
yeah,
is a powerful purpose, So it doesn't have to be
absolutely.
these big lofty ambitions. It could be something very simple, and to live in the present and to be there, to be a good human being, and to help your community. That's the purpose. That's perfectly acceptable in that way. So when we think about thriving versus functioning, then, like,
Hmm.
how can we help? Like, is there anything there that we can help people to kind of figure out what is it that they're doing or where they're at? Because, when I think about, am I thriving or functioning? I think maybe I flip between the two, depending on my workload, potentially. I don't know. Like, what about you? Where do we move from functioning to thriving, or do we flip between them as life moves on?
It's a really good question. And I think that many people do us a disservice by suggesting that it has to be thriving all the time. I don't think it has to be. I think that I mean, it's just like I said, we have our ups and we have our downs. Sometimes we're thriving, other times we're functioning. Um, so, and it depends on workload, it depends on stresses. But the key issue is how quickly you get back to a base point, which is at a level where you can really move forward and do well. So, in other words, I'm just thinking of things that I've done in the past and work that I've done on myself in the past. And one of the keys for me is being able to name what's going on within
Mm,
me, right? And once you know that, you can start to track where you are and you can see what is working for you as you move through whatever you're moving through in terms of personal development. So I think that for me is really helpful. Uh, it doesn't mean you're going to be absolutely full on thriving all the time. But
mm,
what it is helpful to know is where you are at your baseline,
mm.
how quickly you can recover when you do get added stressors like an impossible workload, deadlines, all of that sort of thing. I think that
Yeah,
really helps you. And
yeah.
and so that to me is thriving. It's not that we have to be on this high plane all the time.
No, and as you speak about recovery time, then that also then suggests, well, what is the thing that then knocks you off your perch?
Right.
Because there's I often think about, if you're like balancing on a branch and then the wind comes in, are you going to be blown off the branch, or do you have a strong inner core that means you can hold on,
Yeah.
and therefore you're not going to get knocked off in the first place? Because yes, we're talking about recovery, but what if you can deal with a lot of that stuff and you don't actually get knocked down? You can withstand it. You have the capacity to withstand difficulty, and it doesn't dip you, it doesn't bring you down in the way that maybe it used to. So maybe something working, in inverted commas, is that now you just don't get derailed like you used to in the past. So whereas before a comment or a work situation or whatever might have really knocked you for six and set you back, now that same thing happens, and now you're just, well, I'll just deal with it. I'll just move on. It
Yeah.
doesn't even phase you. I think
Yeah.
that's an important distinction to make as well. That ability to just keep going, not because you're like pushing on through, but because it just doesn't bother you. Things just water off duck's back now. You're just not bothered.
Right, exactly. Because there's another side to that metaphor, and that is, being on a branch that snaps when the wind blows hard and you fall. And of course, that side of things is being in a position where you can choose to be somewhere safer
Mm,
and somewhere that's more supportive so that you don't spiral downwards
yeah.
when things happen. So yeah, it is fascinating. So, it's for me, it's a question of understanding what's going on under the hood, as they say,
Mm,
and being able to work on those areas that will shore up our baseline and help us get through whatever it is that life throws at us, because life's always going to throw stuff at you.
yeah. And there's another part to this, is it working bit. It's like who who decides what's working, right?
Yeah.
So like the one thing that like one of the things that's been driving me with the work that I've done is that with the work that I do with severe anxiety in women is that they're in front of me and I can see the change happening, I can see what's going on, and I can help them to see that. But if they don't see it,
Mm.
then is it really working, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
they need to see that they've changed, they need to understand, they need to integrate that change as part of themselves. So as a practitioner, I'm going, yeah, yeah, of course you've changed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're like, well, have I really? Have I? So have they really? Because it doesn't really matter whether I can see it or not if they're not taking it on board and owning that. So I think we have a situation where maybe practitioners may have a view, and obviously they've got the external view, and it's much easier for somebody to observe and see how you're doing than maybe when you're in it yourself. And so, yeah, who decides what's working? And I think ultimately we need to, if we're doing that work on ourselves, if we need to know what's working for us, right?
Yeah.
Because we're the ones spending our time, money, effort, resources, whatever you want to say, whether it's going to therapy, whether it's doing an hour's meditation every day, whether it's going to the silent retreat for a week, whether, whatever you're doing, you want to know whether that's worked and that's for your own interest. But then, you know, on the other hand, you've got organizations and they're
Mm-hmm.
maybe paying for leadership programs or well-being programs. So that's not you, that's the company wanting to know whether, well, has this leadership program worked? Are people less stressed now that we've given them massages at their desk every lunch hour? Is this working? I think understanding whether that's working is we've all got an interest in this, whether it's the individual on that personal development journey or whether it's the company paying for staff to be happier at work and be more productive.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been research done on outcomes, therapy outcomes as well, hasn't there? Scott Miller and colleagues, they did some research and found out that, without routine monitoring on outcomes, it's very easy for therapists to overestimate their clients' progress. In other words, they think that their clients are doing better than they actually are. And that would be a very human thing to do, right? If you're a therapist,
Mm,
is to overestimate that. And that, often they don't identify clients who are going down, deteriorating until it's a bit late to change course for them.
mm.
So, it is a question of constantly checking in and measuring, isn't it?
Yeah. And the interesting thing about the therapist, not, this research, is that they might overestimate. And I've witnessed a little bit of this with the work that I do, where I see the change happening, but there's a lag
Yeah.
between me seeing it and the person fully integrating it. And so when there's been a shift taking place, so for example, when I'm doing, let's say, getting rid of like fears and phobias and things like that, in the moment in the session, they're like, oh yeah, no, no, now I'm not bothered by that. But they're like, but what if it comes back? What if I'm in that situation again and it comes back? So they don't trust that the work's really worked. And they need to wait until they have an experience in the big wide world. And they go, oh yeah, no, 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 that fear's not come back. Oh,
Mm.
right, okay. And then they have it again. Oh no, no. So it definitely hasn't come back. I've had it 3 times now and I've not had it. Right, okay. The fear has gone. And now they trust it. So that
Yeah.
requires some time to unfold, right? For the client or the person doing the work to go, right, this is now the new me. This is my new baseline. And that takes time for people to realize and to fully integrate that. So maybe there's been a bit of that going on in this research. Who knows, right? I don't know how the research is constructed.
Yeah, no, there may well be. And there's been a lot of research again into positive psychology. And what that found was that there are two different kinds of well-being. There's the feeling good well-being, there's the hedonic well-being, and also eudaimonic well-being, which is living well, functioning in alignment with your values, having purpose, all that sort of thing. So living in a way that really serves you and buoys you up, and and makes life worth living almost. Maybe putting words into their mouths there, the researchers, but this is what apparently most people want, but it's not what a lot of well-being interventions offer. So
No,
there
a
is
lot
this
of them,
mismatch as well.
yeah, a lot of them are focusing on helping you to feel better. But
Right.
again, once we're with feelings, like feelings are just vibes, happy vibes. Like we can't take that. Like, I'm a spreadsheet girl. I love numbers.
No,
Feelings,
I
you
know.
can't put feelings in a spreadsheet.
I
Like if
know.
I'm saying I feel great and you say you feel great, well, how do we know that they're the same? How do we know that, like, you might feeling great? I mean, maybe I'm functioning, maybe I'm barely functioning. And so when I say that, the bar's really low. Maybe you're like a thriving superstar. And when you say you feel great, I mean, you're like on top of the world. They
Yeah,
are not the same, right? So
right.
how can we use feelings like that as a way to measure whether anything's working? I don't think we can. We just got to kick that one out and look for something else, because that is not adequate for the purposes of knowing whether anything's working.
Oh, absolutely. And, think about it. If you're all loved up as well, everything feels great to you. You feel on top of the world, no matter
Yeah,
what. The world could be collapsing around you and you'd still be feeling absolutely fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah. That doesn't always last, of course, as well. There's that euphoric feeling. And that's
mm,
what happens with a lot of well-being interventions. You get that euphoria.
yeah,
And then,
yeah,
I mean, you and I have both been on those, long weekends where it's all been rah rah, it's all fantastic. You're all,
yeah.
you're all superstars, and you leave absolutely feeling brilliant. And a week later, you're back where you started.
Exactly. They're just like, it's just like taking a shot to the arm. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like a happy drug for the weekend that you're there. You're caught up in the energy of it. But it's Teflon personal development. It doesn't stick. You don't, and that's not to say it's not valid. It's still worthwhile to be in those environments. But we've just got to be honest about what is doing what. And so if you go there thinking this is going to change me for good, this is for lasting change. Well, no, maybe it's not. Maybe
Mm.
it's just a good weekend away, like going to a gig. You'll
Mm.
have a great time, but you'll come back and you'll be back to where you were a week before. I think this, what I really want here is I just want us to be honest about what stuff does, because I think that's distinctly lacking in the personal development industry. Is it's being sold as lasting change, and it probably isn't in many
Yeah.
instances.
Yeah. And that checking in, because something might move the needle and it might move the dial, but then, not what's the next thing? It's not enough, right? You need
Mm,
more. So unless
mm,
you're checking in constantly and saying, okay, so I've got to this point, but I'm still not there. I'm still not where I can recover quickly, where things are looking good for me. Then you just need to constantly check back in and see where you are. But if you don't have any map for that, if you don't have any roadmap, how can you do that? You're just sort of randomly tuning in to something that you think might be pertinent to your self-development journey.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny. I've just been speaking to somebody that's just one of our. We've got an anxiety profile, so I've just been speaking to somebody about her anxiety profile, and she's like, "Oh, I think I might get my sister to do this because she's just had a baby, so she's in the all that emotional postpartum period." And she's like, she doesn't know where she's at. And
Yeah.
she said that she goes, I think this anxiety profile really help her to understand where she's at right now, because she can't figure out which way's up and what is the postpartum, what is where she's really at. She wanted something to help her navigate that. And I think whether postpartum or not, that does raise what you just said, this idea that some people just don't know which way's up right now.
Yeah.
So how do they
Yeah.
know if they're moving forward? How do they know if what they're going to do about how they're feeling is right for them, is relevant, is going to support them? Because until you know where you are, none of that stuff none of that information is going to count because you need to know your starting point. It's like if you're lost, you need to know where your starting point is so I can give you directions. If I don't know where you are, I can't give you any directions because
Right.
we're going to, it's pointless, right? That's exactly the same thing. We need to know what the starting point is.
Yeah. And I've done work before where we have talked about a map and knowing where we want to get to and all of that, but there's been no real kind of follow through in terms of signposts along the road. Right. Right, you've taken a wrong turn here, so let's get back on track here. That's the kind of thing that we also need.
Yeah. And I think one thing I've observed a lot in the work that I do is that I've observed, and this is anecdotal, but now we're starting to get some of the research or the data to support some of this, is that there are certain things that support you at different levels of your growth. So when you're early in your journey and maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by your what I call head trash and your anxieties or your maybe your childhood traumas or whatever's going on for you, and you're feeling very overwhelmed by all of that, at that point in your journey, it serves you well to have somebody to help you better understand what's going on for you and navigate, like unpick it and untangle it and better understand it. But once you've done a lot of that and you have a lot of insight and a lot of understanding about who you are and why you are the way you are, after a while that no longer becomes useful. You can then spend a lot of time going around in circles, just even understanding yourself better and me looking at it from another angle. But actually, at that point, that doesn't move you on. So now that whatever you did to get you that far, now you need to put whatever that is down and now look for something else because now you need something else for your growth. So at some point you might need that reflection, that digging around, that understanding the family history, like looking through all of that. But once you've done that for a bit, you don't need to stay there. You need to move on to the next phase, which is actually just getting rid of all of that stuff and not allowing it to hold you back. So that requires a shift. But if you don't know where you are on that range, you don't know the kind of professional that's going to be better suited to support you on your growth journey if you don't know where you are on that spectrum, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then when we ask the question, is it bloody working? By working, we mean what? How would you sum that up?
I'm going to laugh at what I'm going to say. Well, I feel better, JJ.
Just in a few words. You know what I'm like. I like to have things succinctly put.
And I think I'm going to go back to this sense of a stronger sense of personal gravity. And what I mean by that, a center of gravity where I don't get knocked off, where I don't get triggered so easily, where I can take things in my stride, where I have that level of personal self-trust that I can deal with whatever comes my way. Because that means that then I feel less stressed or anxious about the environment around me with all the change going on in the world. When you have a strong sense of trust in your ability to deal with whatever comes your way, you feel less affected by what's going on around you because it doesn't touch you in the same way. So for me, when I ask myself, is it working for me? That's what I'm looking for, is a stronger sense of self and a stronger sense of trust in me.
Right. It's self-awareness in a very practical sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I think we've probably answered our question here. Do you think?
I think we've yes, I think we have. We've probably got a lot more to say on it, but I think,
and we've got,
today.
We could talk for days on it. I'm absolutely sure. But I think we'll wrap it up there. Any questions, you can always get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us through our website, the ladderofgrowth.io, ladderofgrowth.io. But for now, we're going to leave you with a question. Not is it bloody working, but we'll just ask you to, in a few minutes or whenever you've got time today, sit down and now think of an area in your life where you've done some work on yourself. Well, it doesn't matter what it is, therapy, counseling, coaching, anyway, anything, a practice or a program. So now put any feelings about that to one side and then ask yourself what actually changed in how you function in that area, whatever area it was that you wanted to effect change in. What did change? Don't talk about how you feel about it, but what did you do differently, decide differently, or maybe just respond to differently? How do you act now? And actually just notice how easy or difficult it is to answer that question for yourself. And we would love to hear how you get on with that question. So please do send us your comments, send us your answers, answers on a postcard. No, answers here at Substack. We'd love to hear how you do with it, because I think it's a question that not too many people ask themselves. And we'd love to know how easy or difficult it was for you to answer it. So we look forward to hearing from you soon. But for now, it's goodbye from me, and Alexia, goodbye from you.
Bye. See you next time.